Hello BookTube! This time I'm coming to you with my first review video. Now I've been planning to do this video for quite a long time, but I just kept postponing this because I didn't know how I would execute this. And I'm still not sure if this is going to work, but I just need to try, and I really want to get this review out of my system, so here we go. It's going to be a double review, or dual review, review, if you will. So, first book, The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue, As You Were by Elaine Feeney. Now, this book have some similarities or things in common. They were both published in 2020. They're both by Irish female writers, although Emma Donoghue is Irish Canadian. They are both set in a hospital. They both center around female characters. They both have one brutish man with one redeeming feature. And they both have magpie on the cover and as a motif in the book. So let's start with Emma Donoghue's Pull of the Stars. So Emma Donoghue has written several books, or several novels, before this, and this is her 13th novel, if I know how to do my maths right. This is set in 1918 Dublin during during the Spanish flu epidemic. And here we follow a nurse as she works in the maternal ward of a hospital, assisting pregnant women to give birth. And this nurse is called Julia Power, also known as Nurse Power, and she is there to show us some real nurse power. Other characters include Bridey Sweeney, who is this energetic volunteer character, amateur who doesn't really know anything about nursing. Then we have Dr. Lynn, who is this rebel character but really good with her job, and she is at one point arrested by the police for her political activism, and I think she is here to show some political stuff of that period, like all the suffragette movement and women's rights and the relationship between Ireland and UK. Then we have Groin. Groin, funny. Yeah, he's this brutish guy who works as an orderly. And yeah, he's the one who has one redeeming feature, which I won't tell you here. And then there's Tim, who is Julia Power's brother, and he is probably here to show the effects of war and bring some different kind of love to the novel. And in the midst of life in the hospital, there's also a love story, lots of death and sickness, and a motherless baby gets a new chance at life. So that's pretty much the plot. But this novel is not... plot is not the main thing about this novel, I would say. So the good things about this novel, I think this has great atmosphere and the world building is very believable, at least to me. It felt like we were in 1918 Dublin during the Spanish flu. And yes, you can totally use world building outside of the fantasy genre. And I think her use of language is very good here, especially the way she uses war imagery throughout the novel. Like cuffs are described as explosions or explosive, and then there's this one paper boy who repeats his chorus of like a battle cry. Then babies are like born into trenches and enter the world in frail battalions and stuff like that. So what it does is it brings the war front to home. War from the trenches in the midst of ordinary people. And also this makes the people who work and live at home so sort of similar war heroes as those who fight at the front. And this was my first Emma Donoghue book. I know she has written some excellent novels like The Room. I've heard great things about that. But this gave me a feeling that she is a very solid writer who knows what she's doing. I felt really secure in her hands. Well, not literally. And I think that also translates to this novel in a bit negative way, in my opinion. Because this, although it was very solidly written, and I think it has a very good story, I think this felt too safe and predictable, that there were some plot elements that I could see coming from miles away, which is not a good thing. Let's move on to the next one. So, As You Were by Elaine Feeney. So Feeney, who is she? She's an Irish poet and a playwright, and this is her debut novel. And this also takes place in a hospital, but this time in contemporary times in Ireland. And here we have several very different patients sharing the same hospital room. And they are really very different. At times it's like mental asylum, and then another moment they are like one big family. So this is also about, dynamics between people. So this is not about the plot. This is really a character study, or several character studies at once. And it features, different versions of shame, I would say. For example, our main character, Sinead Hines, is severely ill, but she hides her illness, or hides her, severity of her condition from her husband because of shame. And then, of course, there is the brutish guy, who is Sinead's father, and he also has some shame-related issues. So what's good about this novel? In my opinion, the language here is very confident, and Feeney is really brave, Like she takes some risks with the language, featuring different elements. Like there's colloquial language, there are actually some emojis, and text like you would see in some texting app when you talk with someone. However, I think that it didn't feel sort of natural and convincing. Like, to me, it felt rather self-impressed. And then I think at this point I would like to read this one paragraph here. Sort of give you an idea of what the language is like overall. So, before Magpie, I had been to hospital a handful of times. 3 times to birth 3 boy children, the 3 kings. Once to have a thickened viscid appendix plucked off my bowel, and once for an STD screening that turned out to be discharged from a burst ovarian cyst. Phew. You went to hospital for a baby, and it was a happy place. That's what my mother and the neighbors said. They shared packing advice. Makeup bag, fluffy bedcoat, Solpadeine, Epsom salts, prune juice, new flannels, XL disposable knickers, yellow or cream clothing for baby, cream blanket with breathing holes, mittens, baby grow, hat, a change of clothes and some snacks for your husband. And right on the next page we have, I'm not sure if you can see this properly. All right, I just read this to you. It's not going to end well. No, she's not always like this. No, sauce. I don't know her date of birth. Or sauce. No, I don't know her next of kin either. Sauce. Sauce. Shoo, shoo, shoo. I said over and 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 over again. Shoo, shoo, shoo. This was how I would herd sheep, chanting. I use it now to control the pain. So yeah, as you can probably see, it's pretty all over the place, and sorry about my reading, it wasn't probably that good, but at least now you have an idea what to expect. And the sample that I read to you also shows one of other annoying things about this book, but I think it's also there for a purpose, and that is these inventories or lists. And I think they are there to portray Sinead's need to control and understand her environment. And also I think it forms a link sort of with the magpie. Like in folklore, magpies is like in European folklore at least, magpie is this thing that sort of looks after all kind of shiny objects and collects them. And in a way, I think that's what Sinead, the character, is also doing. Like she's focusing on these very mundane things instead of focusing on what's important. And what else? The positives. So yeah, I just featured language, both positives and negatives. Let's continue with the positives overall. So yeah, I think this managed to pull at the heartstrings when I least expected it, and that's something very good about this novel. Like, although this doesn't feel that convincing throughout, there were two or three really great moments that really sort of felt genuine and carried sort of honest emotional quality, I would say. Like there's this one character who sort of manages to surprise us even after his death. And there's this one character who does something unexpected. Like, imagine that you grew up with parents who never appreciated your reading hobby, never bought you bookish gifts. Then one day, just once, that parent does something extraordinary. He or she buys you a book. It could be a poetry of Seamus Heaney. It could be a biography of Isaac Newton. But the point is, that moment, that one special gift, feels really special and carries more emotional value because it feels so like one-time event from that person. So yeah, there was a moment like that in this book that felt really honest and genuine. Right. And what about the negatives? I was wondering why there are so many weirdos sharing this one same hospital room. Like, that felt too planned and manufactured, just to bring all kinds of different personas and conflicts in the book. And I thought there was this character called Hex that was whose sole purpose was to bring up politics in this book. I might be wrong, but that's the feeling I got. And then a very minor thing. Here we have an epigraph by Mike McCormack. Here on the cover we have Thrilling by Mike McCormack. Now, that to me felt like I'm trying to avoid some rude words here. Very much, the literary equivalent of you scratch my back, I scratch yours. So yeah. I wasn't a fan of that. Just a thing in general, I don't like these, stupid praise things on book covers. I think you should just get rid of them. And that's, especially a thing in the English-speaking market. That I rarely see those in Finnish book covers. So yeah, in my opinion, covers should just have, some evocative design, some picture, name of the author, name of the book. That's it. Or it could be some very minimal cover design. But none of this bullshit, please. So overall, I think this is a very promising and brave debut novel. Very confident, and perhaps too confident, and it ultimately fails to convince the reader. Well, at least me. So, although these books individually were a bit of a letdowns, I think they complement each other rather nicely and work as a pair unintentionally. Like here we have, this hospital environment and nursing in 1918, very different times, and here more contemporary look at nursing. Here the nurses are mostly, I think they were all Irish, but here in this contemporary novel most of the nurses were immigrants. What does that tell about the value and appreciation we give to nurses these days? Is nursing a job for immigrants only? So yeah, no continuation of that thought. So yeah, as individuals, bit of a letdowns, but together they work rather nicely. Oh, and I forgot to mention, if you want sort of a very vivid interpretation of Bridey Sweeney with one of the characters here, go check out Barb and Isabella's channel. The font, Bob had a very visceral reaction to Bridey, so I will link a link down below. Go check that out. So, one for sorrow, two for joy.